All right, I've been getting requests about how I would go about lighting an interior of a car. So here is a Dodge Viper, and it's semi-prep. This is a CAD model that FCA gave out, I believe in 2008, 2009. So it was given publicly to the public for educational purposes. This is a tutorial, so educational. And this is an official CAD model. Now, the reason why I want to use this model instead of something off of like TurboSquid or whatever, this is very detailed, and this is what, if you work in the automotive industry, this is what you typically get from a client. They provide you these engineering CAD files, and they're very detailed, and they're a lot better quality than this was. But back then, the data prep quality, just the standards weren't what they are today. So if you look on the interior, there's dials missing and stuff. Like there's the needles, but they don't have any of the numbers like speedometer, RPMs, all that stuff. So I'm not gonna go and find texture maps and go crazy with the texturing because I don't really care about this vehicle. This is really outdated and I don't really want to spend all my time prepping something I don't care to actually use for my portfolio or whatever. Now, with that being said, it is still good enough for educational purposes. And for this video tutorial, this is what I'm going to use. So I have it prepped with my materials. I have a cyc wall that I put it in. So what I'm going to do first thing is display as a box. And for the cyc wall, I'm just going to apply kind of like a simple white material. So the idea is you're inside of a studio because the lighting situation I want to use for this interior is studio lighting. So I have blue on the car itself. I think I'll give it like a red car paint. So let me switch that out real quick. Do, 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 do. So here we go. All right. So long story short, what we're gonna do is start lighting it. And the way I like to light my car interiors is kind of like I do my exteriors. I work with the rim light and then I do a final hero fill if I need to. So what we'll do is turn on RT so we have some visual reference of what we're looking at. Now, the way you would do this if you were in a studio is either you put a white cloth over the car, you strobe it, or you, inside of an enclosed studio with a cycle and such, you can use hot lights onto the walls, beam them into the interior. There's different ways to light it. So what I'm going to do is kind of mix those techniques in CGI, of course, using the tools we have available. So I am going to go and create a very light top view. And the idea is behind the car. So my camera is looking from over here into the steering wheel, as you can see in the bottom right corner. I think it's like a 24mm lens, so it's pretty wide angled to make sure it fits inside the car. And typically I like to place my cameras like you would in real life. You're not gonna move the camera inside the headrest. You're either gonna lower the seat, you're gonna open the door, you're gonna do things that you would do in real life. In CGI, that's what makes it realistic and believable. So now with that said, my camera's over here. It's kind of like at the headrest area, looking into the steering wheel center controls area. So making a very light from the back side. I'm going to create a targeted, aligning it to the steering wheel. And what I'm going to do is move it up and from behind. So the idea is I'm going to want to see some rim light on the steering wheel. And that's going to give us some detail across the dash. So I'm just going to place it like this. As you can see, now we're starting to get some shape. So we got some details showing up. We have the round design. We have some fun carbon fibers showing up. We're getting a nice highlight on the shifter, a little bit of play, a silhouette over here, some nice handrest detail, and a little bit of shape on the seat. So I like that. Now what I am going to do is make this a V-Ray HDRI light, and I'm going to use one of my custom studio lights. I'm going to go with the gradient square. I'm going to make this light invisible. As you can see, now we're getting some nice reflective properties on the mirror, the carbon fiber. So, okay, so that's my first light. Now what I'm going to do is copy it, and I'm going to move it in front and on the side, kind of like this. Now above the car, I'm going to increase the size of this light. And what I want to see here is giving me the shape and design of this, the steering wheel, the little A-pillar, whatever, the mirror, the dash. I want to see more details and edges shown. See the seats starting to show up, And so what we'll do is kind of keep repositioning it until we get something nice. Maybe even give it more power. There we go. So that's feeling good. Now what I don't like is how reflective my glass is. This is becoming very, very distracting because I don't want to see all this and get confused with what I'm looking at. So I'm just going to go to my glass material and really turn down the reflective properties. And as you can see, there's something weird happening here. So glass clear. Does it have a clear coat? No. So that is just, and again, this is probably because of the old CAD data. There's some very weird things happening. And this is not good. So I'm going to convert to editable mesh. Probably going to add a shell modifier to it to see if that will help, unless for whatever reason my 3D Max crashes. 0.001. Okay, I don't want edge text. Okay, so as you can see, this is not good. This is what happens with old, outdated CAD data. It's just issues. So what I'm going to do is I don't want this to crash. I'm going to stop RT. I'm going to go back to this. And for now, I am literally going to hide the glass. And what I'll do is a separate reflection pass of the glass and just brush it in post, because that the way I like to work is I like to do quick solutions to problems. So instead of spending hours trying to troubleshoot what is happening with the glass, how to fix it, so on, this is an easier solution for me. Hide it, render it, and then brush it in post and call it a day. That's always my goal, is how to get the jobs done as quickly as possible. And in this situation with bad data, that's what I would do. So now we're going to turn on our T again, and let's see what this does, because now we're probably going to get a little better visual on our highlights and such without the distracting glass. All right, so now this light, I'm going to increase its size as well. All right, maybe 50, 60, there we go. So now what we want to do is copy this light and kind of put it overhead a little bit, kind of like this, and maybe a little bit of sideways. So this is just kind of giving us a little bit more fill on the whole interior. So as you can see, we're starting to see a little more detail here, a little something here, a little more detail here. Still kind of dark, but it's starting to help. So let's see if we do like 150. So 100. That's fine. Okay, so now that we have that, we're starting to see some shape. This is fine, but it still doesn't have any kind of like wow factor. It's not gorgeous or anything. So this is where we start adding little key lights. These are kind of like your rim lights, your intense lights, things that make the interior just a little more interesting to look at. So I'm going to add a little bit of a strip light and place it above the window looking down like this. I'm going to blast this, so 200. And then what I'm going to do is go to Vray Light Lister. I'm going to turn off our basic fills. So now we're working on these little beautiful like spotlight fills. These are the things that really add some juice to the interior. So there's one. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to move it over here. And what you don't want to do is, as always, use the same direction from the camera. So our camera's looking into it from this place. If we put a light that's shining from the same angle as the camera, this is becoming flat. Last thing you ever want, whether it's an exterior, interior, product shot, is you never want to have the light be directly behind the camera and flatten your image, because that just kills the whole excitement of looking at it. You take away the drama, the angles, the design elements. So that's why I can't do that. Now you see, if we just place it somewhere like this, all of a sudden we're taking that flat visual away and we're bringing back shape. So what I'll do is something like this. There we go. Maybe 100, nothing too crazy, but as you can see, now we're getting some beautiful carbon fibers showing up. The leather's getting that wet reflection type visual. The handbrake levers, getting some nice rim light, some edge light. We're starting to get a little bit more shape here. We have the key ignition area showing up details. So this is what we want. We want to see the elements and the design beauty of the interior without it being too obvious. So now that we have that, what we might want to do is copy this light and go from the back side. This is, again, I'm not making things weird where I'm putting lights where they wouldn't go. We are literally just putting a softbox on the back side of the window of the car. So in the studio, you would have like a Kino light or something on the light stand and you would just shine it through the backside. So Vray light lister, I'm going to turn off these lights and see what this one's doing. So this light right now, as you can see, we're starting to get some shape right here showing. We have more of that carbon fiber. We're getting some of that center dash detail. The shift knob's getting some action. And okay, so as you can see, we have this weird line. I bet that's due to the cutoff. So if we turn that to 0, there we go. That line's gone. So right there, that's a sign that this is going to be a problem. So we'll just go in and turn it off for all of our other lights, like so, just so we don't run into this issue when we render the final. They're like, oh crap, where did that come from? So there's that. And then what I'll do is bump up the size a little bit more, and then maybe the intensity, and see what happens. Okay. And we're starting to see some more of the headrest detail, or the roof, ceiling, whatever you want to call it. And this might be a little too much because now it's starting to get flat. All right, so now what I'm going to do is turn on all my lights again. So go in and just turn them all on. All right, so this is looking good. We're starting to see a lot of the detail in the interior. We have shape. It's not flat, and we're seeing all the body lines. We have little rim light here, rim light there. When you add contrast in post, it's going to look nice. One thing I don't like is, one, my mirrors are too hot. This is really distracting. So what I'm going to do, instead of fixing it in post, and it's just a material property, I'm just going to tone down the reflection of it. And there you go. I like the way that looks. My red paint is a little too obnoxious. So I'll go turn this down like so. Now, this is where you kind of have to like figure out what kind of artist you want to be. I personally do not care about realism. My personal end goal is making a pretty picture. So let's say you have a car paint material and you know, hey, this is how it looks on my exterior shots. This is physically accurate, blah, blah, blah. Given we're still living in a fantasy virtual world. This is not photography. This is still faking everything. So there's two ways you could do this. One, you could be like, okay, that's overexposed, and now I'm gonna render it, I'm gonna mask it, and I'm gonna lower the exposure in post because my car paint's accurate. Or two, you could be like me and be lazy and be like, hey, I could just adjust the material because, again, the shot is the interior, it's not the exterior. As long as you're not saving it over your master file of the prep, just tweak the material in CG, and when you render it, you don't have to fix that in post. Now my mirror is looking good. It's not too overexposed. It has the depth that I want, and it's good. Again, if I was to render an exterior shot, now all of a sudden my car doesn't look proper. But for this shot, for this angle, I'm fine with this. I'm happy with this, and I'm not going to be upset that I had to fake something. I do not care. I just want to get the job done. So that's my personal outlook on realistic materials and so on. If it looks good, that's all that matters to me. It's very simple. So that's feeling good. So the one thing is our interior or the exterior of our cyc wall is just gray. And I want this to be a beautiful white, kind of dreamy, very open where you feel like you want to be inside. And what I'll do is I'll just light the cyc wall the way you would on location. Use hot lights. Now, in real life, you would use hot lights. They're little, well, they're not little, they're quite big, but they're disc lights. And what I'll do here is I'll just create a big softbox, throw it on the back wall, make it invisible, and just blast it. As you can see now, this has given us that big airy atmosphere type of vibe. Do that, copy it, throw it on this wall. I'll probably go something like this. See what would happen if I lower it. Maybe I'll like the gradient more where it's more bright on the ground and feathers off into darkness. And that might look cool. So let's see. Let's see what that does. So I'll do the same thing on this light. I'll lower it. So we have kind of like a gradient beaming upward. Like so. And what I'll do is display the cycle. I gotta see what I'm doing here. Okay. And we're just gonna extend it out there. Here we go. So now we have a nice white visual. And now the other thing is, this is really dark and black up here. I think I would like to see a little bit more information. And what you can do, I'm going to display this as a box again, is for example, if I was to shoot this interior, I have my camera on a tripod or whatever. If I wanted to have a pass where I have the ceiling visible, I could put my strobe head on the seat right here and just do one shot where I just blast it into the ceiling. So that's what we're gonna kind of do, because then in Photoshop I'll just brush in just the ceiling detail, but in CG we could just make the light invisible. So that's again the advantage we have of fake reality. So I'm just put my strobe head right there. If I was to rest it on the seat. All right, let's turn on some directionality because I would have that on there as well. Kind of like that. 500. So I don't like this nasty shadow, and this is part of the old CAD data issues, is things aren't sitting up against the way it would. So what I'll probably do is go in and just rotate it. Let's see what would happen. There we go. So I would probably at this point have like a handheld thing where I kind of hold the strobe and hit it, make it invisible. So as you can see, now we're starting to see some detail up here. All right, that's fine. I'll probably make it like a 75, so it's not too bright, just enough to give me some detail. So let's see if we could turn it off, black, turn it on, just a little bit of detail. So I'm digging that. That's looking good. Now let's see if we want to isolate any independent items. And this is where like the last bit of the lighting comes in. This is where you really start to dial things in. So we have our steering wheel, and that's fine. This is looking good. It might all look good, actually. So for this one, I may not even bother doing any kind of fake independent lighting. Unless I want my seat to have some separation, which I probably want to try. So let's do this. We're going to select the seat, make a selection set, name it seat. There we go. Now I'm going to go top view, light, options, exclude. I'm going to select seat and include. There we go. And now what I want to do is just really blast this light source into the seat and see if we get some nice rim light separation. So 24. All right, now I'm just gonna move it over here. This could be nice. We get some of this showing. So let's see, put it up some. The idea is you don't want it to stand out where it looks like we faked it. You just want it to naturally feel beautiful. And this is nice. We have this shape showing, this rim light, A little bit of detail here. We have the seat detail showing. I'm digging it. I don't mind that at all. Maybe lower it just a hint. And maybe just change the temperature. So let's go to like 5,000, 6,000, just so we give a little bit of a color tone to this. All right. And now one thing I do want to do, just like real life, is add some depth of field to my lensing. So my focal point, this is where you figure it out. Do you want the Viper badge, or do you kind of want the center console area? So I'm just gonna move it right over here, kind of like in between both of them. Turn on depth of field. So if I was to shoot an interior, I'd probably want like a f8 or f11. So I'm just gonna leave it at f8, and now as you can see, our focus range, I'm gonna make it more of a center console dash. So there we go. This is kind of where the focus range is, and everything else should have a nice subtle hint of blur, a little depth of field action happening. So there we go. That is my first setup of the interior rendering. So I'm going to do Vray properties on the cycle, make sure it's -1. So our alpha is going to be something like that. So that way I could still have a little bit of control in post if I want to. I don't know if I even have any alphas for any of these things. This is just, it's all leather. And I think adding some contrast, some kind of like glows around here, and it's pretty much done for me. I don't really want to overthink it. Um, with that being said, I am going to render this out, and then we'll go to the retouching stage. But what I'll do too is I'll pause it and then I'll show the reflection pass for these windows, because I mentioned that glass. While I do like the reflection, I do not like what the hell I was getting over there. So I'm gonna pause it real quick, render like a 4 or 5K render, and then do the reflection pass and go over how I'm doing that. All right. All right. Now that the render is done, the last thing we're gonna do is render the reflection pass for the windows. So the very quick and easy way for me to do this is, instead of doing the glass, so for instance, if I turn it on and I turn on a render element called Vray reflection pass, it will render it. That's one way of doing it. Another way, and this is just simply because again, at this point I do not care, it's just a simple reflection pass for the glass. I don't have the glass visible in my main render. I'm just going to do a Vray material override. My base material is going to be the visual, and then for the GI and stuff, we're going to make it clear. So we're going to name this clear. I'm going to make it pure black in the diffuse, like so. So let's see, select all of our windows, so pure black in the diffuse. And then what we'll do is refraction, pure white. So we just have a clear glass with no reflection. And we're going to assign this to everything except for our base. And our base, we're going to leave it black and full reflection. And now let's take a look at what we get. If I put things in the proper area, what should happen is exactly this. A reflection pass that is a manual setup. However, as you can see, nothing on the interior has changed. We still have a pure well lit interior. It doesn't affect it because all the other properties are all clear glass, and that's what I want. So now what I'm going to do is turn off distributed rendering. Since I don't want to do that, this is going to be very quick. I'm going to do selected, turn that off, just press F9 real quick, and quickly just render a reflection pass of the glass. And in theory, it should fly right through it because there's not much to it. It's a black diffuse with a reflection property. So I'm going to pause this real quick while this renders, and then as soon as it's done, we're going to head on over to Photoshop. All right, render's done. I'm in Photoshop. Now I'm just going to quickly assemble this. So I have my base render, I have my reflection layer, I have my glare, and that's pretty much it. This one's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, not anything crazy. So set that as a screen, set that as a screen. As you can see, it's not too bad. I think I would like to see a little bit more in the side glass just to see some of the interior. So I'm just gonna keep duplicating it a few times. There we go. All right. Gonna mask that in and just quickly go in and just brush it in over here. Just so I could get some of this. Now what I will do is go into here, like so, and just gonna gently brush it in. As you can see, the darker we make it on the outside, the more the reflection you see. So that's all I wanted, was just a little bit. Now what I'll do is create a brand new layer and kind of fake that gradient some more. The horizon line. All right. So now what I want to do is kind of add one final look and feel to the whole interior. I don't want to really overthink it, keeping it simple, and I like what I see. So what I'm going to do is copy, merge, paste it. All right. I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to filter camera raw filter. Again, this is all personal opinion. This is just the way I think would look cool. So I'm going to cram the clarity all the way to the left. Gonna bump up the highlights like that. There we go. Go bring up some of that contrast. All right. Now I'm gonna go in alpha mode. And now the reason why I did that is I just want to brush it in around the edges. Give me kind of like the dreamy feel. Like it's just soft light coming through the windows. And what I might even do, so let's see, with and without. I'm gonna bring that in as a lighten mode. There we go. And I'll probably create a new layer and just, no, that might not do it. I don't like how that looks. Not gonna fake it. Just naturally let that happen the way it does. All right, copy merged again. I'm gonna add a quick little blur. And now I'm gonna go into exposure X. Again, my go-to for final look and feel. Bump up the contrast, add some clarity to it, bump up the highlights. It's gonna give me more of that glow outside the windows. Get some of that halo spread. Maybe the shadows, darken them a bit, just so I could get some more contrast on the inside. The blacks, just a hint. So as you can see, we're getting some real depth in it now. And this is why I didn't really overthink it in CG. I knew in post this is going to get all that juice back into it with just some simple sliders. And the last but not least, I'm going to do camera raw filter. And what I want to do is just give it a little bit of a blue tone. Just a little bit, nothing too crazy. Just cool it off a little bit. Maybe even bump up the exposure some. Gonna bump up the highlights. Let's see what dehaze. There we go. That feels pretty nice. All right. I am gonna add a little bit of more saturation to it. This is just making it feel very just airy and just welcoming. All right. There we go. And then what you can do is add one more layer on top. Change the opacity and just add your own little custom vignette to it. Just so the focal point is the center. All right. And then I'm just gonna go in and just brush it off just a little bit. There we go. And that is a quick tutorial of how to light, render, and quickly retouch an automotive interior.